Hello, welcome to the Somerset Roundtable. My name is Virgil Pacheco, and I'm here with my co-host, Betty Pont. I'd like to welcome you to the show. Our show is a spin-off of the Positively Somerset Facebook page. The intent of our show is to create a platform and communicate and inform the town residents of everything Somerset. We want to discuss local issues, events, and allow citizens, business owners, nonprofits, and department heads to have a voice. I'd like to take this time now and hand it off to Betty.
Thank you, Virgil. It's nice to be with you again. We've been talking about Somerset and everything Somerset, and we've also been talking about Renaissance. When most of us think of Renaissance, we think about great art. We think about the masters. And this afternoon, we are really pleased to showcase for you a program which highlights the Renaissance as well as the historical foundation upon which that Renaissance is to be built. With us this afternoon, we have Ginny Troutman from Somerset High School and Mary Ann McDonald of the Somerset Historical Society, who have collaborated very closely in creating a project and a program called Envisioning Somerset. And with that, I'm going to turn the program over to Ginny so she can explain to us just how it got started and your vision.
Thank you. I'm an art educator at Somerset Berkeley Regional High School, and this project that we've started is going to be a large-scale photo installation where the students have been taking photographs around town documenting both Somerset past and present. And we're going to have these banners hung throughout town, as well as having an exhibit at the high school. So this whole project kind of was inspired by Mary Beth Meehan, and she is a documentary photographer in Providence, and then she is from Brockton and has done projects there as well. And after I saw her large-scale banners, her work is much more about the culture of both towns, and the goal of her work is really to create connections between people who have different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and to showcase similarities and differences and bring people together. Our project focuses a little bit on current Somerset, but also brings in a historical aspect of Somerset that was inspired by the town's 225th anniversary. Teaching digital photography, I had a student 2 years ago who did a project where she did a photo essay where she documented historic buildings down in the village. And this was Jill Sargent, and she just did an amazing series of photos that actually educated me. I don't think I knew everything about the history of Somerset.
This was something that she did on her own?
They were given the assignment, they had to create a series of 10 photos illustrating a narrative, some sort of visual story.
And this student chose our town.
And this is what she did. And honestly, I have to give her credit for this inspiration for what this project has turned into. So thanks, Jill. We had Mary Beth Meehan come in and speak to the students about her work. And the way that the project first started was that she came in, talked about these people, and the students went out around the town and started photographing portraits of people in town. And I love this example. This is Savannah Covell, who is a senior at the high school this year, and it's of Bob, who owns Sunset Records. And it's just such a beautifully done portrait that I think captures him in his location. So this project has been funded by Mass Humanities, and Mass Humanities the goal is really to create civic awareness and bring communities together. So I'm hoping that this project is not only about photography, but also is kind of a conversation starter for the entire town to really look at what we have and look at this rich history that we do have. In addition to Mass Humanities, who generously gave us $5,000, Bay Coast Bank has been a supporter, the Spirit of Somerset, and Somerset Underwriters Insurance Company as well. So we've been really fortunate that this money...
It's been a real collaboration.
Oh, it's been amazing because when we originally started, it was supposed to be 8 to 10 large-scale banners for this townwide installation of photos was going to be created. Because of the additional funding, we are going to have 16 banners that are going to be installed beginning tomorrow.
Can you talk a little bit about the banners, about the size and the
They're-
composition and the material? And
Sure, they're vinyl all-weather banners that are going to be installed on town buildings such as the town library, the Historical Society, North and South Elementary, the high school as well, and the fire and police station. We've had just so many people that have been really willing and excited to participate in the project. But they're 5 by 70 feet, if not larger, all the way up to 8 by 10 feet. And they'll be up probably for a year as long as they're able to withstand the weather, which obviously the person, Mary Meehan, has really helped us along with this project. Sign Design, which is a company in Brockton, has worked with her printing and installing these banners, and so that's who we're working with, and they're doing an exceptional
so these will be mounted temporarily, but for a year, on the side of public buildings. And I think you said there was a bank that was...
Bay Coast Bank.
Bay Coast
Yep,
Bank
they're
is
one of our supporters, and so at the Stop and Shop Plaza, there'll be one that will be facing the Route 6 side as
So
well.
they're all through town where citizens can either walk by for a closer look, or when they drive by, we'll notice these prominently displayed
Yes.
on the sides of buildings.
And there will be plaques as well that will have the students' names who took each one of the photographs, and also gives a description of the location and the historical significance of each piece.
Nice.
Mary Ann, this must have been an exciting program when you first heard about it. You know, someone coming in, a group of students, to highlight all of the historical components and properties in town.
Yes, actually, I was thrilled when Ginny asked if I could help out. I have a genuine interest in historic preservation, and I really believe that if people are more aware of how historic Somerset is, that they will become increasingly passionate about preserving as much of it as we possibly can.
You know, it's funny you say that, because we had a guest last week that lives on the waterfront, and one of the qualities of or one of the comments that he made was sitting out on his front porch and just watching the tractor go by, or just people walking by the waterfront. You know, and I think the history of town, you know, is valued, and I think, you know, with all of the discussions about marketing and stuff, we really need to kind of highlight that. And I think this program is kind of a perfect example of it. It took the history as well as the current and kind of merged them together. I've looked at some of the photos, and they're absolutely amazing.
Beautiful.
Especially when you look back at the center of town.
Right.
You know, I've been in town for a little over 35 years, and I remember some of the features that are no longer there. So I think it's a great thing for the high school students to kind of visualize, you know, how it was. And sometimes just when we're walking around the studio here, you know, and you look out across the waterfront, you know, you see some of the remnants of, you know, old historic monuments. And I think it's a great feature.
Yeah, and a lot of people are not aware of how far back it goes, Virgil. I think many of our residents would be surprised to find out that we have had in Somerset permanent residents for at least 8,000 years. People have lived along the western banks of that river. That's been documented by archaeologists who found evidence throughout Somerset of prehistoric settlement. They've found tools, they've found weapons, they've found household utensils, mortar and pestle. They've even found rocks that have been hollowed in different areas of the rock, and they were used to put their paints in, so that they had a little tray with paints, and you know, when they decorated their faces and their bodies. But 8,000 years is a long, long time for one spot to be permanently lived in.
What was the first area in town that was settled?
Well, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. The entire landscape of Somerset was settled by the members of the Pecasset tribe, and that was a sub-tribe of the Wampanoag Federation, and they were coastal people, and they had villages along the waterfront of the Taunton River. They had villages along the waterfront of the Lees River. There was quite a large community where the current Somerset Berkeley High School is situated today on County Street, which was a trail. So, you know, the entire area here was settled by the native people. That's prehistoric. The historic period reaches so far back that we could say Somerset is a microcosm of the entire American experience for the last 350 years. Open up any United States history textbook, go chapter by chapter, and in each chapter from the very beginning, you will find a reflection of what was going on in Somerset. That's why I say it was a microcosm of the American experience, or is rather. We have seen it all. We've seen it all right here on the western banks of the Taunton. The stronghold of the Pecasset tribe is what Shawamet was. It was an important place. In the Wampanoag language, Shawamet, which was their name for this community, Shawamet means where the boats go. So we know that there was a lot of trading here. We can also say it was an important place in the Wampanoag Confederation because we had our own sachem. His name was Corbitant, and really, going through the records, it appears very likely that he was number 2 only to Massasoit, who of course was the great chief who helped the Pilgrims out in Plymouth. Now, as every student knows, the Pilgrims arrived in December of 1620. But what a lot of students in Somerset don't know is that only 6 months later, in April of 1621, a young, very energetic man, by the name of Edward Winslow, who was a pilgrim, went on a visit to Massasoit. And he had to travel along a very crooked old Indian trail that took him from Plymouth all the way to Warren, Rhode Island, which is where Massasoit was based. It took him through this town. It took him through what is today Somerset. When Winslow went back to Plymouth, he wrote up a description of what he saw, and he was quite impressed by what he had seen in our own area. And he proceeded to send the manuscript to London, where it was printed in 1622. The resulting book was the first book about America that had been written in America, and it contains a description of Somerset. How many communities can say that?
Not many, huh?
We are a very historic
Unique.
place. Talked about the river, talked about, the possibilities for trade and being able to navigate that river. His book goes in at great length about the trees he saw in this area. He's very precise. You can pretty much figure out where he is. And I think he was in the area of Whetstone Hill when he talked about how the rolling landscape there reminded him so much of places in England. He talks about the number of skeletons he was able to see along the waterfront because a terrible plague had swept through here before 1620 when the Pilgrims arrived. You asked me, when was the first settlement? First settlement took place when this Shawamet was settled as a frontier town of Plymouth Colony in 1680. And I can't really tell you, Virgil, which area was settled first. I would go with 2. There was definitely a settlement at the southern end of town, and there was also a settlement along Main Street in the northern part of town. Those were the first 2 areas, but very early there was the development of distinct neighborhoods too.
So of those 2 areas,
Yes.
it seems to be that Main Street has kind of retained its historical
Yes.
value, and South End naturally
That's right.
has changed.
That's
It's
right.
funny you say water, come to the water, and we still value that whole waterfront
so
property.
much.
Waterfront Park, the entire new development area that
Yes.
we always hope for something happening down at the bridge area. So
Yes.
it's and the shipbuilding, the shipbuilding still exists.
Oh yeah, it does. I mean, it's an amazing thing.
It's always been part of our identity, but now we have a better understanding of the historical footings.
Right.
For that.
And you would be amazed at the number of things that echo from the past to the very present 21st century, too. First people who came into Shawamet, as it was called, okay, were members of the Society of Friends. They were Quakers, all right? And they were looking for a place where they could live and have some degree of civic involvement, all right? Today we would say civil rights. Some degree of civil rights in spite of the fact that they were Quakers, because they suffered some awful religious persecution in other places, both in England and in the colonies here. In 1680, when they began to filter into what is our town today, the only other place where these people could live in peace was Rhode Island. And you will find, if you go through the names of the very earliest people to arrive here, you're going to find that most of them came from Portsmouth or from Newport, and they're all names that you'd recognize. Slade, okay, Eddie, Chase, Bowers. I mean, these are all names that we recognize today. But they were members of the Quaker denomination, and they built the meeting house that still stands on Prospect Street today. Now, a portion of that meeting house, we know, dates back to 1701. The Massachusetts Historical Commission, the Boston folks, have informed us that that is the oldest meeting house in Massachusetts, and it is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. But they had a great deal to do with the culture of the town in the beginning, and a lot to do with it. And they were the first people who moved here.
So when the two of you get together, you know, the idea that you had mentioned earlier, where you're taking the history but also the current, did you try to overlay those two? So having some of the historical photos of Main Street back in the day,
we actually did,
compared to nowadays?
One of the students whose mother had grown up close to County Street brought in some of her old photos. And he found the photo and found a place where he could photograph the rest of it to kind of show the transition from old to new, from past to present. So this was a great example of that.
And it's funny,
as well.
when you first picked this up, you know, it is the center of town. It's kind of where the post office is located. And at first glance, it looks like a historical photo, but as you kind of tail off to the right, you can see the Marafa sign in color. That's a pretty interesting photo. I mean, if at first glance, you would never know that that's a mix of historical and current, you know, conditions.
Now, this is Phil Shagnon, and
That's a great job.
Once he got the idea of this project, he just took off with it. And so this actually be one of the large-scale banners.
So is that two photos just side by side, or is it kind of blended in?
We used Photoshop
in
the digital photo class, so he was able to overlay them together and then merge them. So
that is talent. That's great photo.
This will be at the public library.
Oh, great.
So one of the great things is that the grant and all the funding paid for Mary Ann to come in with the students. And so she first came and gave a presentation to the students. Again, this is the advanced digital photo. So it was a smaller group. It's about 36 students. And then after she came into the school, we were able to take a bus and spend a day with Mary Ann taking the students around. We did go to the village, and so we went as we walked through, and she pointed out lots of historic buildings and talked about the families. We went to Waterfront Park, and then we did kind of a driving tour through Pottersville.
Yes.
And then made it all the way over to Slade Cemetery, where the ferry used to be.
Right.
And if this is information you don't know, if you'll come to the exhibit, there will be a narrative that Mary Ann has written that is going to kind of sequentially and chronologically go through the history of the town with the students' photos alongside.
So of the entire town, what is the most nostalgic part of town that you enjoy?
I love Main Street. I love to walk along Main Street. Because it is in a pretty decent state of preservation.
Correct.
And I love to look at the homes, and I know a little bit about the homes, and I know a little bit about the people who lived there, and the things that they did, and how they contributed to the town. All right? Main Street is the place where a man named Jonathan Bowers lived, and he is credited with building the first wooden frame house in Somerset. It goes back to the 1600s. He also began a shipyard, which provided work for other men who came and brought their families with them and settled here. It led to the growth of the town. You also have a corner of South and Main Street. The house is long gone, but the man who, more than any other single individual, is responsible for Somerset becoming a separate town, all right? He lived there, and he represented the town in the Massachusetts legislature, and he was a good friend of John Hancock, and he knew them all, and he got his way, and Somerset became a separate town under his guidance.
You know, you mentioned first wood home.
Yes.
I find it fascinating. I actually have a degree in architecture, and it always amazes me, you know, how they built homes in the day with the
Yes.
peg and
Yes.
hole and peg, and you know, no power tools, and
Right.
you know, and I think where we're situated right now at the studio, this was probably one of the areas where they made nails back in the day, correct?
Oh
One of the
yes,
buildings?
yes. There was nail making at this site, and also down where the marina is. You had the ironworks. You had more than one ironworks, but they came and they went, and that was when this part of Somerset became more industrialized. And see, that's another thing that the town witnessed. We see the clipper ships being built, and those ships brought prospectors to California during the gold rush beginning in 1849. So Somerset is a part of that expansion of the country. We had the beginning of industrialization, 19th century industry. We had the shipbuilding did continue to a certain extent, but we had the ironworks, we had the nail mills, we had a shoe factory on Old Colony Avenue. We had a stove factory on Main Street. We had quite a bit of industry, to say nothing of the development of Pottersville. There was a huge plant, by
Well, that's-
any standard.
And it's funny you say that
situated there.
because you know, a few weeks ago there was a gentleman on a selectmen's meeting discussing the original group of folks who actually built the center of town.
Yes.
Not to take away from the topic, but I think
Yeah.
it has a lot to do with the transition from old to new. But
Yes.
what was the reasoning and what caused the Main Street center of town location to move to its current location?
Part of it had to do with the location of what is today called the Old Town Hall. After Somerset became a separate community, they needed a place to hold town meetings. And that was the area that was chosen because it was right in the middle. Notice it's on the corner of Center Street. That was considered the center of town.
That's interesting.
And that would be fair for people to come to. The other reason is Buffington Street was a conduit, really, going all the way up the big hill to Swansea and beyond. Farmers would bring their products down Buffington Street and bring them down to the waterfront. If you just keep on going in Somerset, you're going to hit water one way or the other. So that also led to the development of a center of town. After Main Street was rather eclipsed, there was an economic failure at one point in shipbuilding that affected people. You did have the industrialization, but more and more, and especially Virgil, when people began moving into Somerset in the 40s and I shouldn't say that. They began moving in here. It's very unusual. But during the Great Depression of the 30s, more people moved into Somerset than one would ever imagine. People didn't move around too much during that period of time. They stayed where they were and hunkered down. We had a tremendous influx of population coming into Somerset during the 30s. It kind of, waned a bit in the 40s with the war going on and all, and then it picked up in the 50s. And a lot of the available land for building a home was in that part of town. So that also led to the development.
So is that what also generated the location of the Swansea Meeting House, kind of being along that Buffington line?
No, it wasn't. That meeting house was built on, again, one of those ancient Indian trails. And at that point in time, when it was built, Buffington Street did not go all the way to the west to the Swansea line, but it went up as far as where it turns in today at Prospect Street. It did go that far. So if a person wanted to come down County Street, which also existed, they could follow County, go up Buffington just a bit, and go down Prospect Street. Some of them walked, some of them rode horses, some of them would have had a little cart or something, and that's how they got there. Yes.
So going back to Ginny, you must have been really kind of pleased that someone was basically trying to, take this project with students and, kind of highlight the historical value of town.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you see this? I mean, what are your visions of this particular event and this particular program kind of expanding into the future? Would you like to see it, take a different course next year?
I would be so happy to see a continuation of this kind of thing, because it brings together so many different groups of people, and it benefits everybody. The entire community, the entire population of the town will benefit from this. They'll see the banners. They can go to the exhibit. They can appreciate the students' work. They can appreciate the teachers' work. And it brings together young people with an opportunity to explore the history of the town. How many times, Ginny, on the field trip did we hear a student say, "I never knew that"?
Right.
I've learned a tremendous
Right.
amount of info just in this short
Well, yeah,
amount of time.
I mean, I never knew that, they'll say, and they're interested in it, and they're fascinated in it.
It's their town, and in order for their roots
Yeah,
to
it
take
is their
hold,
town.
they
And
need to know it.
I say kudos to Ginny
Yeah,
and the people who helped her, because as I said a while ago, I'm very interested in historic preservation. The best way to preserve the past, to honor the past, okay? The best way to honor the past, and we have a wonderful heritage to look back on here. Best way to honor the past is to preserve it for the future.
Exactly.
And that's what Ginny and her students are doing. And they're doing it as a real community effort. The teachers, the students, the Historical Society has been wonderful.
That's what I was going to say. Well, that was one of the other great parts of the
Yes.
field trip, was we were able to go. Rick Shane met us
Yeah.
so that we could stop and have lunch there and then see the different exhibits. And some of the students had never been there before.
No.
And so it was just amazing for them to see the collections that were there. And they have like the room that has the penny farthing and the cameras, and they did the Native American room as well. So there was a lot of great artifacts that nobody knew was
Right.
there. So
Right.
that
it's
they're
all-
now part of, that belong to them
Yes.
as much as it belongs to every member of this town.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a great resource.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to this. I mean, with our own families, right? We always want to see our younger generations do better than us.
Right.
And I think, with your knowledge, and you're kind of highlighting some of this and getting the students involved now at this point, they kind of value, what we really have and why we moved here. I know I talked to my daughter who's just about entering into college, and she's already mapped out her next 3 or 4 years of what she's going to do after school. But ultimately, she wants to come back home.
So many people do.
And that's kind of, that's really the reason why we all moved here was, the great school systems, the great features of town. And I think we just, if you take that waterfront theme, right, we have such a jewel. We are very fortunate to have a beach. The boat ramps, the hopefully the future development that, could come along where the old bridge used to be.
Yes.
Where do you see, you had a lot of challenges, basically coming up with an idea that ultimately needed some resources and funds. And you were pretty fortunate to, get what you needed.
yeah.
Where do you see this kind of moving forward? Maybe you want to talk a little bit, I guess, before we get that, is about the upcoming show.
Yep. The show is going to be on April 30th in conjunction with the musical, which is Beauty and the Beast this year. On that Saturday, there's a show that is at 1 o'clock and another at 7. So we're going to have the gallery space open from 12 until 7 with an event, an opening event that will be from 6 to 7. But at any time during the day, people are welcome to come and see the exhibit. But the installation of the banners, which again will be up for the year, is actually going to happen tomorrow and on Friday as well.
And
Now,
this is in the White Gallery at
The
Somerset
James,
Berkeley?
yes, the James F. White Gallery. So if you enter in the performing arts entrance, you'll take a right to go past the library, and we're over in the art area of the
Now,
school.
is this free to the public?
Oh yeah,
Okay, so
yes.
And any time, as you say, between 12 and
7.
7.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. Yeah.
So, where do you see this heading? I know you mentioned earlier that the banners are going to be up for a year. You have a host of photos and other, information.
We've definitely had conversations about some things that could happen with it. We're hoping that the show itself, after being at the James White Gallery, will also potentially move to the public library, and that maybe in the fall it could be exhibited at the Historical Society as well. I know I've talked with Dave Barabee with the Spirit of Somerset, and he was interested in actually having the photos being projected during the day or the nighttime festivities. And who knows, if we wanted, we could continue this project, and maybe it becomes an annual project that some of the advanced students are working on, and there could be rotating banners that could be in different locations within the town.
Ginny, you talked about collaborating with Mary Beth Meehan, who is a professional photographer and who has experience. Have you shared any of these student work with her, and what's her reaction been?
She was so fantastic when she first came and did her original presentation. She came back with one of the advanced groups, and just one of the very brave students was willing to share the portraits that she had already taken, and got immediate feedback from Mary Beth. So that I think she really enjoyed, both from both ends. The students who were watching really, I think, learned a lot from the immediate, not criticism, but critique and that she was able to give her. And obviously Mary Beth Meehan will be invited to come see the entire exhibit as well.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I was going to ask you if she was part of that exhibit and what her role could be or would be. Could you tell us a little bit about how the students' photographs were selected? What about that selection process?
Good question. We had a panel of a lot of different people. They went through 2 rounds of selection. So after the students had been on the field trip, and a lot of the students had been taking additional photos to prepare for this, they submitted all the photos to me, so I made a huge PowerPoint. And so we first had Dave Barabee from the Board of Selectmen. We had Julie Gagliardi from the school committee. And we had Lynn Sullivan, who is a resident, but she also works for the Fall River Herald News. We had a representative from Berkeley, and everyone came in. We projected, and they had sheets where everybody went through their scoring. So after we went through that initial round of scoring, the second phase was I went through, narrowed it down, and it was sent to the superintendent, to our principal, and to Bay Coast Bank, where Ann DeRosiers was our judge for that, and to Bonnie Mendes from the Public Library, Diane Goodwin from the Somerset Historical Society, and Mary Ann gave her feedback as well. And so after going through those 2 different rounds, we then narrowed it down to the 16 banners.
So you started with how many
I was just going to ask
photographs?
the same.
Well,
Hundreds?
36 times a minimum of 5 each. So it was,
So it was
a
well over
big-
100,
yes.
well in excess, and you were able to narrow it down to 16. That's,
Well,
It
and which
wasn't
was so
easy.
hard. Yeah,
I'm sure
so
it was.
hard.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it was.
Steve
But-
Meehan, who's another art educator at the high school, has been a huge part of this project as well. And just every step along the way, he's been on the field trips with us. He's helped me with the narrowing down of the photos. He's been
The students
really
who are in
great
your
part.
class, you said it's an advanced class, so I'm assuming it's upperclassmen. Will any of them be able to repeat the course next year, or serve
a
as
good question.
ambassadors or mentors to students who will be wanting to study this kind of photography?
That's a great question. It is a lot of seniors who will be graduating. I think some of them will be staying relatively local, but we definitely have some of the juniors who have banners that have been selected as well. So that's nice that they will be in town next year too.
We talk a lot about budgets and budget numbers and crunches and stuff, but programs like that, and almost like you feel like you need a feeder program at the middle school because, with social media nowadays, you see so many talented, people out there with photography and stuff that just don't know how to take it to the next level. I mean, I think that's kind of like something that we should focus on, is almost like a mentoring program, where you bring the younger generation up for that day as a field trip of their own.
Yeah,
and kind of get them interested in it.
We've been doing a lot of work with the middle school, between the art departments, and one of the ways that we've been sort of making sure that the middle school knows what's going on in the art department is that they already have the Big Buddy Days that is organized by Ann Nassif and Ann Bolduc, which is an amazing success. But during those days, they're able to visit. But this year, we did some additional work where the 7th and 8th grade Spectrum art programs actually had an exhibit of their artwork in the James F. White Art Gallery. So it was a really nice opportunity to invite those students to come in with their families. And I think over the next few years, we're actually going to expand that so that we'll have even more high school students there, and maybe some of the studios open so that they'll be able to see what's going on.
One of the things that came to mind as you were just saying that is, with the jewel that we've had as of a high school, and the art program the music program and cinema program seems to be really taking off with the different projects that they have. I mean, do you see throughout the year of engaging this advanced digital class into doing galleries, where you could actually do your own kind of fundraising to facilitate some of the funds for your program next year?
That's a good question. Well, the other thing that we had discussed was potentially making a calendar and selecting some of the photos to be in a calendar. So that could be one way that we could perhaps generate money that way. But the other idea was that calendar money that could be raised from that could potentially be for some sort of art scholarship for some of the students as well.
Yeah, I think, go back to our collaboration, I think a lot of people, a lot of citizens don't really know what happens in town, right? From the historical society to programs that happen at the high schools, And I think items like this and programs like this and shows like this kind of are trying to open it up to the entire community and show the different aspects of things.
And I hope that having you both here today and this type of program of Envisioning Somerset, going beyond the school, going beyond the Historical Society into the community, really shows the value of the arts. When we talk about budgets and and we know that we're all trying to do more with less.
Right.
That's the reality. But to say blankly that we need to cut the arts is such a crime to these students who are producing these beautiful works of art, who are marketing our town, who are marking the Renaissance, if you will, the revitalization, and it's done through the arts. I hope if nothing else, it highlights the importance of having these kinds of programs in our school and all of the students that it benefits. Not just the students in your photography class, but all the students who come to the Historical Society, and all of the students who are in the middle school or elementary school who have a cell phone and take pictures all around town. Maybe they'll start looking at them differently, through different eyes. They're snapping all the time, but what are they snapping pictures of? And maybe by looking at some of the student work, it will open their eyes in a different way.
And that's actually an additional part of the exhibit that I've created a Facebook page called Envisioning Somerset. There's a website called Envisioning Somerset. But I'm hoping that after people see the exhibit, that hopefully they will be inspired to photograph Somerset past or present, and that they might want to post them onto this Facebook page. So it's not just for students, but anybody. And it could be that they're photographing old photos where we're seeing what Somerset once looked like, or other things that they see around town that seems historically or culturally significant to them. So I'm hoping.
I wonder how many people have in their attics or in their closets or in shoe boxes tucked away somewhere gems of pictures of Somerset.
Yeah.
In the olden days, as they say. Is there some place that they could share these?
Yes, at the Historical Society not too long ago, a woman came in with some photographs that were in her family. She lives on County Street. She lives on the west side of County Street, and one of the photographs show the cow fields across County Street, okay, all the way down to the river. You could see the village
Really?
from County Street. Yeah.
Really?
People are generous. When they have something like that and they understand how valuable it is, they will bring it in, and the Historical Society is always happy to make a copy and give them back the original or whatever they want. The same woman brought in a photograph, a class picture of the village school. You were there. But how about the class size, the graduating class, village school? Maybe 18?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wow.
And she knew all the names.
she did.
Really?
And that is very, very rare. That's rare.
Now, it's not only photographs, you will accept artifacts or,
Yes.
articles of clothing. I know a lot of the high school uniforms have been kind of published in some of the
Yes.
Historical Society, photos.
Yes, yes. Yes. Yeah, if you have something, if anybody has something that they think would be of historical value and they would like the museum to have it, there's a process. And the person that they should speak to is Diane Goodwin, and she's the director of the Somerset Historical Society, and she would be the person who would be most helpful to
I think
to that.
the two of you have kind of created a little team that almost, the students could actually photograph some of the artifacts that you have in the current, Historical Society Museum.
Yes.
And
Actually,
even
John Larson had that idea
Yes.
that he had
upload them to the
proposed.
website,
Yeah.
and give, just people who have moved out of the town and still have,
Right.
an interest in seeing what the town is about.
Right.
I think a lot of that could kind of be tied into, town marketing plan and whatnot,
Yes.
town's website, and so on.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of like you two kind of created almost another unique avenue to kind of explore some of the town's history.
This is one of the best things that's happened to preserving the town's history in a long, long time. Because, not to be redundant, but it involves everyone. It interests people. They like it. And as I said, if you are aware of it, you're going to be careful of it, and you're going to try to take care of it.
Well, it's kind of taking a task that would normally have cost the Historical Society money and turning it into an educational program that kind of taught two things: photography,
Yes.
past history, and kind of current, technology.
Right.
Just by merging those two photos together,
Right.
at first glance, like I said, you can't even tell the difference. So I think you guys did a great job. Is there anything else you guys want to highlight that we may have missed?
You have a logo
Yes.
for Envisioning Somerset. Could you talk a little bit about that, how it came to
Sure.
be, and the meaning behind it?
Yeah, if you'll notice, this is the cupola from the old high school, which has really become a symbol now that it's on the front lawn. But working with my husband, who is an art director and graphic designer, the idea is to put the aperture of a camera into the logo. So right here, we're kind of embodying the idea of vision, so envisioning Somerset, as well as suggesting photography, and then the historical meaning of not only the school, but the town, and kind of using education as a symbol as well. So hopefully that symbol and logo can embody all of those things together.
And how did you come up with the name? Did you reach out to the students for suggestions? Was it a kind of a collaborative effect?
The students helped with choosing and selecting logos for it. But Julie Gagliardi was really instrumental with helping me way from the beginning in trying to get this grant. It was quite an extensive grant writing process for Mass Humanities. And so I think it was when Julie was meeting with me that we kind of came up with that idea. So the idea of envisioning, so having a vision of what it is and what it has been. Maybe the next step could be what it will be. That part wasn't necessarily part of what we're working on right now. But
You brought some other photographs.
I did.
Do you want to share those?
I sure will. So in this image here, you can see the time of day was not taken on the time of the field trip, but this was by Denver Weeks, who had gone down to the waterfront But again, if we see the significance of having the remains of the dock, so suggesting the idea of the shipping industry that had been so
Now,
important.
where was this taken?
Down at Waterfront.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yep, right at Waterfront. And again, to kind of segue into the historical aspect, one of the posters that I did bring, and again, these posters in the exhibit are going to follow the narrative that Mary Ann has written about the history of the town. But Diane Goodwin was fantastic at the Historical Society in helping me find images. And this is actually from her private collection of, they were small trading cards for ships. And we had so many really important ships coming right out of Somerset. This is the Governor Ames, the legendary 5-masted schooner. And you'll see the symbol of the Governor Ames around town. There's some of the one of the buildings on Main Street, one of the houses has it, but at the Old Town Hall, you'll see the logo there as well. But again, you can see right here, this is the Clara Davis, and you can see Somerset, Massachusetts right here. And the Governor Morton, another important one, and this was its sort of trading card. And this one was known for being one of the fastest ships, or that was the Raven. Let's see.
The Raven held the record for a while.
Yeah.
And don't forget, these ships were headed for California to the gold fields, so there was a tremendous amount of pressure on who's going to get there first. A lot of competition as to who could make it in the least amount of time.
Because I don't think people understand the route that they had to take.
Exactly.
They had to go south around South America.
Yes.
And then back up the other side.
Yes.
To get to California.
That's right.
It was before the Panama Canal
That's right.
was even
That's
envisioned.
right. Yeah.
And how long would it take them?
Oh,
Months?
Virgil, you've got me. Oh, yeah.
Months.
Yeah. But there was, as I said, a lot of competition. Which would be the fastest? Oh, I love that one.
Yeah,
do too.
this one is by Jill Silva. And another important aspect of the project was to not completely neglect Berkeley, because we are Somerset Berkeley Regional High School. So the students were obviously welcome to photograph in Berkeley. We're going to have 2 banners also installed at the Berkeley Community School. And then on the back facade of the high school, we will have 1 image from Somerset and 1 image from Berkeley showing our bond and community.
Which is going to be great, because with all the sporting events on the fields,
They'll be very
it'll be visible to everyone
Visibility.
outside of the town.
But this is Jill Silva, and you can see she's obviously gotten up very early in the morning to capture this time of day, but showcasing the new Berkeley Bridge, which again has lots of significant historical.
I'm still amazed at the quality. I mean, these are professional photos that
They're
know,
good kids.
we have juniors and seniors, providing.
Talented,
Yeah,
talented
very
young
talented.
people. Very talented.
Here's one more image here. This was taken while we were at Mallard Point.
Oh, yes.
And Mallard Point, we hadn't mentioned so far, but it was historically it was once the railroad.
Yes.
So if we're right outside in Water Place Park, you can see across the river where there's the old, it's not necessarily a roundhouse, but it was where the railroad used to go from Mallard Point across over to Fall River. So the students we were kind of blessed with this amazing day on the day of the field trip where we got out, and I thought, oh no, this isn't going to work, because it was kind of rainy, but there was this beautiful fog and mist. And then by the time we got to Waterfront Park, the fog broke and we had these beautiful blue skies.
And for people who haven't experienced Mallard Landing or haven't walked that, it is the most beautiful spot
really
in town.
It is.
Opening up to the river.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yes.
Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. You've captured.
Can we
you've
can we show
envisioned-
one more thing?
Oh,
Sure.
absolutely.
Oh,
Can we talk? Can we talk about her? This is Mary Sherburne Bowers.
and that is her portrait, painted by John Singleton Copley, and it hangs in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manhattan. She was the wife of Giraffe Mill Bowers. Giraffe Mill Bowers is the gentleman I mentioned who lived on the corner of South and Main Street, okay? I referred to Somerset earlier by its Picasset name, which was Shawamet. But Shawamet was made a part of Swansea, and it remained a part of Swansea for 110 years, even though it maintained its own identity as Shawamet. Shawamet Lands, they called it. And Gerasimil Bowers was the person who engineered the split from Swansea. So the question came up, well, what should we name it? And apparently he loved his wife very, very much, and he wanted to call it Sherburne, which was her maiden name. But unfortunately, there was already a Sherburne in Massachusetts, so he decided it should be called Somerset because she came from Somerset Square in Boston. And that's how Somerset got its name, and there is Mrs. Bowers.
Interesting.
And this is Somerset Square, an old map of Boston right here.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine that, the roots of the name, the
Yep.
origin of our
Yes.
town's name
Yes.
has its roots 50 miles up the road
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Somerset Square was part of her father's estate.
in England.
In no, in
Oh,
Boston.
in Boston.
In Boston, that was
Oh.
his estate. Yes.
Because there are Somersets
Oh yes,
in
England. Yes, there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. There we go.
Oh, and there's our meeting house.
There's the meeting house and one more very important person.
Right. We didn't mention the fact that another thing Somerset unfortunately witnessed during its growing years, there was extensive black slavery in Somerset. You have to remember that Newport and Bristol, Rhode Island were the two predominant slave import centers in the Northeast.
Was that due to their farming roots?
I'm not sure I understand.
Was that due to their farming? It seemed
This is
like
where
Newport.
I think where they came in. Because
Yes.
Because the ports.
The ports, yeah,
Okay.
you had a lot of black slaves coming into both Bristol and Newport. And you have to remember, of course, Somerset was a very maritime-centered town, and you had ship captains going here and there. You had a lot of black slavery in Somerset. And I can say that because I've read the wills. And I could tell you names of lots and lots of people in their wills, men, women, and children, were bequeathed to another member of the family, okay? There was a woman who became a minister of the Society of Friends during the 1760s. Her name was Patience Brayton, and she felt that slavery was a moral evil. Now, even the Quakers had slaves. Her husband had slaves. Many, many people living in Somerset had slaves. So she started by gently persuading them to give up the slaves. This is not a good thing. This is not what God expects from you. You're not supposed to own another human being. And she was very successful locally, and then she branched out and she traveled as far south as Georgia, asking other people to give up their slaves. Now, she was by herself with a backwoodsman guide. There were no roads. All right, she was on horseback. She writes about using her saddle for a pillow. And when they got to the border of Georgia, the backwoodsman, who I always kind of envision as a big hulking person, he said, "Lady, I'm not going into Georgia with you with that kind of a message." She said, of course I'm paraphrasing, "That's okay, I'll go myself." And he wound up going with her, and it turned out they were treated very, very nicely, very well. But this woman, this is the 1760s, she's 100 years ahead of the anti-slavery movements that resulted in the Civil War. So she's an important person.
Amazing, amazing. Right here in Somerset.
Yep.
I have to congratulate you guys. You've done an exceptional job. I mean, this is a great program. The collaboration between the schools, the Historical Society, the sponsors, the students, even the town to, grant you some leeway on, signage installs. I mean, this is a perfect example of what the town should be on every project.
Yes.
I mean, this is great. It's been an exceptional. I mean, I've learned so much from you in this short amount of time. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here.
So,
thank you for your support. Ginny,
Yes, thank you.
Ginny deserves a great
Kudos.
kudos to you.
Well, I couldn't have done it with your help and with the help of so many people in town.
Correct.
I didn't go anywhere where I had people saying, no, I don't think so. Every group that I talked to was insanely supportive. So we've been really lucky, and I'm glad that it's happening.
Well, this is just
Exactly.
another example of what can happen when people work together in a common goal. For a
Yes.
common goal with nothing,
Yes.
no other
Yeah.
agendas of any sort.
No.
Just this is what we want to do. We want to envision it. How do we bring this to the town? I too want to thank you for coming in on this very special day of yours, Mrs. McDonald. I've learned so much this afternoon, just enriching what we have been taught and what we've learned from the society. I do want to thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Not many people would give up their birthday afternoon to come and share it with the town, but that just shows what a true trooper and passionate
Generous.
citizen.
Oh.
Passionately generous. And Ginny, thank you, and make sure that you thank all of your students
Oh, I will.
for the fine work, and it's amazing. Professional quality. They have made us very, very proud through their work. And these are things that happen, I'm sure you see, on a, I don't want to say routine basis, but they happen all the time.
Yeah, we are really fortunate to have the James White Gallery space because we do frequently have exhibits in the school. And maybe we'll use venues like this to make sure they're promoted and
Yeah.
people know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how do you promote those now?
We do have a website, and the school's website as well. They're great about promoting shows. We've had the shows advertised on the outside of the school as well.
Great.
Well, we thank you again for your participation this afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
And I hope that citizens will take advantage of the gallery April the 30th from 1 until 7 at the James White Gallery at the Somerset Berkeley Regional High School. We hope that you will, as many of you as possible, take advantage of it. And thank you again. Thank you all for watching this afternoon. This is just an example, a perfect example of coming together as a town, different departments within the town to act as one. We need to collaborate. We need to do this to move forward. We have here the historical foundations that our town was built upon. They seem strong and firm, and it's our responsibility to continue that growth. And,
Yes.
and the best way to do it, your example is a perfect example, is by collaborating and working together.
Yes.
Thank you again for watching this afternoon. We hope that we have kept you informed and as to what's going on in town. Please reach out to us if you have any future ideas or guests you would like to see, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.